And now the judges will introduce themselves.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Dan.
I'm back. Good afternoon, Wisconsin. My name is Dan Wong. I'm a retired attorney and former judge and a Zoom, well, not a Zoom neophyte, but obviously I sometimes forget to turn on the mic. I'm also on the National Board of Directors for the Center for Civic Education. I live in Boise, Idaho, and I'm excited to listen to your testimony and presentation today. I'll let my fellow judges introduce themselves.
Hello, Wisconsin. My name is Maria Garnett. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I work in state government. I'm currently a policy advisor for the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. Prior to that, I was a nonpartisan policy analyst, and I evaluated how well government programs performed for the Virginia General Assembly. This is my third year being involved with We the People as a judge, and I cannot wait for our conversation.
Good afternoon. My name is Petra Al-Soufi. I am the Outreach and Partnerships Manager at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. We're a research organization that researches American Muslims and other faith communities. I'm also on the board of the Michigan Center for Civic Education. And many years ago, I was in your place as a student participant in We the People program. So this is me from the future telling you you'll make it. Enjoy the experience. As stressful as it might be today, you'll do fine. And I hope it inspires you to continue civic education and public service.
Would the students please introduce themselves and their teacher, and please tell us the name of your school.
Good afternoon. We are juniors from Wauwatosa West, representing Wisconsin as the state champions. My name is Jude Whale.
Zoe Del Vecchio.
I'm Donovan McGann.
I'm Emily Lenahan.
And I'm Ella Archambault.
We're here on behalf of our teaching assistants, mentors, and teacher, Mr. Chad Mateski.
All right, welcome. All right, thank you. Let's get right to it. I'll read the question for Unit 6, and it is question number 2. President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. Do you agree or disagree? Why? What disagreements did the founders have about a standing army, and are they relevant today? To what extent should there be an international U.S. military presence?" You may begin.
What, sir, is the use of a militia? It is to prevent the establishment of a standing army, the bane of liberty. This statement from founding father Eldridge Gary encompasses a theme among the founders, a fear that, if instituted, standing armies would be used to revoke the liberty of citizens.
In 49 BC, Caesar led his army across the Rubicon to conquer the very empire they had been defending. In 1765, the British Parliament instituted the Quartering Act, which specified the housing locations and conditions of the British standing army. A month later, the army was turned against the colonists. Both examples prove to the founders that standing armies have great potential to infringe upon citizens' liberties.
That is why under Article 2 of the Articles of Confederation, there is no means to grant the national government to raise an army. Instead, they were left to rely on states to raise their militia when needed, following Montesquieu's view in his piece, The Spirit of Law, that republics best exist in small homogeneous nations to ensure security against abuse of power.
In 1787, the inability of the national government to suppress Shays' rebellion underscored their lack of means to raise a federal army. The founders were left in disagreement. They recognized the need for protection against forces domestic and foreign that threatened their citizens' safety and freedom, but conversely, they still feared a standing army would result in damage.
Today, threats to liberty and security come in different forms. The increased influence corporations have over the military. This is a misplacement of power, seeing as these institutions are not invested in the citizens' liberty or security.
The military-industrial complex was strengthened during the Vietnam War, when the government turned largely to private contractors, many of which were tied to politicians. This misplacement of power has continued through the rapid rise of government spending on military contracts. According to the Project on Government Oversight, in 2019, the Pentagon spent $370 billion on contracting, more than half the total defense budget and 164% higher than its spending in 2001.
Much like during the founding era, national protection is crucial, but the United States has become unreasonable with expanding the military-industrial system, that it is now detrimental to the liberties of the people. Funds could be better allocated to domestic programs, focusing on other metrics than global military presence. According to former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, the current US battle fleet is larger than the next 13 navies combined, 11 of which are our partners and allies. This massive disparity disregards our nation's power through economic prosperity, while providing little benefit to national security in this degree of excess.
Overall, there are methods to maintain security while reducing costs and saving lives. Currently, America's relocation of troops to Guam is beneficial, but there should also be a reduction of troops in Japan and Guam by half. The reduction and relocation will fulfill the same objective while reducing costs and increasing political tensions. Looking at South Korea, America has 23,475 troops stationed mainly to deter potential attacks from South Korea. This is unnecessary in this location and only elevates the likelihood of conflict.
Troops in Saudi Arabia should be removed because of Saudi influence in Yemen and the Iranian anti-American sentiment created by our presence. Additionally, both countries are more stable now than in the past, and removal would save $87 billion annually.
Funding is essential to social programs domestically that in turn increase liberty and security. To assess international military presence going forward, the creation of a congressional committee to weigh defense spending with social programs would be invaluable.
Dr. Martin Luther King stated in his speech Beyond Vietnam that a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Let us heed his advice to avoid such a fate. Thank you. This concludes our statement. We are now ready for follow-up.
All right, thank you. So if I heard you all correctly, I believe that you advocate the reduction of troops in Japan, but there are some who say that if we do that, we will be less able to quickly and efficiently defend against China, which is expanding in that area, and North Korea, which is in that area. How do you respond to those people that say what I just said, that moving troops from Southeast Asia, particularly Japan, would reduce our ability to address Chinese and North Korean threats?
According to a recent NPR study, in the battle against China and Taiwan, if China chose to attack in Taiwan, we still do not have enough military forces, and it would take 80% of our standing military in order to beat Chinese short-range missiles alone. And in these studies, we fail in almost 9 out of 10 of all the scenarios. So even if we increased our presence there, it still wouldn't be enough. So we need to remove our troops to save money and save lives.
Additionally, the military forces are becoming more cyber active and the technology world is growing. The last attacks among the US have all been cybersecurity attacks.
Additionally, the RAND Corporation conducted a study that analyzed the effects of military presence on other countries that are adversaries to the US, and it found that in nations that US was stationed closely, there tends to be a high level of military activity and more outbreak than there is in a decreased level of US presence.
So I want to ask you first, I want to push on something that you said about, creating a new congressional committee, for example, to weigh military spending internationally against domestic programs. What existing oversight and authority does Congress have to make these kinds of decisions? And what should they do with that existing authority in order to do what you're advocating?
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12 grants Congress the power of the purse, which allows them to determine where funds should be allocated to. This gives them power over controlling the defense spending, which is crucial to US decisions.
While Congress has the power to look over our spending in our country, military spending, we have one of the highest out of the world in our military spending. We are ranked #1. Therefore, pushing more of our spending over to domestic programs such as education, for example, we are ranked 27th in the world at education, and pushing some of that money would reduce that gap.
Article 1, Section 8 also allows for civilian control in multiple branches with a Congress that is committed to oversight and also inspector generals within the executive.
Article 2, Section 2 grants the president executive authority over the military. So I think that there really isn't that much Congress can do to prevent all these military actions when at the end of the day, the president is the executive chief of the military.
All right. You mentioned in your response and also in statement cybersecurity. Do you think our spending and our focus on the traditional military should be shifted to focus on cybersecurity? Are they the same? Can you share a little bit more with us in what your position?
According to the US congressional budget, we spend the most money on weapons and not training or cybersecurity. And we can see that this is a big problem considering the past 3 attacks on the United States of America have all been cybersecurity attacks that have caused significant damage. So while we're not being physically attacked, we are being cyberly attacked. So we need to refocus onto a new and ever-changing enemy.
Former President Obama famously stated in a debate that of course we have fewer naval forces because we also have fewer horses and bayonets because the nature of the military has changed. So we need to shift to these changing circumstances.
A recent intelligence report released last week mentioned China and Russia's cybersecurity attacks toward the United States as the greatest threat currently facing us. So obviously, if they are just last week saying that this is an issue, we need to beef up our cybersecurity response.
And cybersecurity is important to our nation, our allies. We have military bases in other countries that we need to focus on more. Essentially, we can see that we have grown in 3% from 12 to 15 from the past year in a gross domestic product, seeing that we need to help our allies before cybersecurity in a sense.
So it sounds to me that you are in favor of increasing our cybersecurity. And so Eisenhower talked about a military industrial complex. Should we be concerned about a military cyber technology complex and what that would mean for us? Explain your answer and your thoughts.
Well, currently we kind of see this happening. Historically, these military corporations have been proactive in changing their focus depending upon what the US requires. We saw this during Vietnam. We saw this when we invaded Afghanistan in 2001. And moving forward, we'll certainly see these private corporations as they want to seek funding and contracts from the US government shift towards more cybersecurity focuses.
No, I believe that the military industrial complex was a positive thing in many regards. As we can see with the Marshall Plan, private corporations work to help restabilize Western Europe, to help keep out the Soviet Union's influence. And even with tech industries, this would still be very prevalent. As on April 12th, the Chinese president declared that we are now an equal to the United States. We are no longer a second. As the United States is no longer the top dog in the world, we need to ensure that we are working with private corporations to help better advance our technology as quickly and fast as possible.
We can guard against an alliance between technology companies and the government through something similar to 10 U.S. Code Section 113, which requires a 7-year retirement from a military corporation before serving as in a political position.
Are there any other changes that you think should be made in order to rein in the control that corporations can have on congressional decisions through their campaign contributions?
President Eisenhower, in his farewell address, considered calling the military-industrial complex the military-industrial congressional complex. And we see this trend towards Congress members being intertwined with these corporations, as a study by the Project for Government Oversight found that 73% of the lobbyists working for these corporations were formerly employed by Congress. So, and also additionally, it's also found that nearly $250,000 is given annually to committee members in their political campaigns. So more transparency when it comes to these fundings and where they're getting the money would be beneficial.
We currently have a drone caucus in Congress, and this caucus works for the interests of drone manufacturers. We don't have caucuses for green energy or healthcare currently.
According to a recent Harvard study, the top 10 think tanks in Washington, D.C. are.
Sorry, that is time.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Hmm.
So I always hate it when the facilitator says time, because I really do enjoy these conversations, and I was excited this year when they said we're, instead of 6 minutes, they're going to do 8 minutes, and I always like to wish we had longer time, but of course with so many teams, it's not logical or practical. But anyway, the reason I like longer time is because really it's very apparent that you've done a lot of work in studying historical bases to answer the question, and also have spent a lot of time thinking about the future. And it's the youth, such as yourself, who are thinking about cybersecurity, cyber technology as the new battlefield, as it were. And it's important that makes me feel confident that we will continue to have our presence in the world that's less costly than the billions of dollars that we currently spend. So I enjoyed your thought processes, your presentation, your testimony regarding the future of military spending and what we should be spending our money on. And well done. I appreciate the job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I learned things from you all. I didn't know that there was a drone caucus, so thank you for alerting me to that, which I will be sure to learn more about. I was really impressed. I think you're the first team that I've seen between yesterday and today that had such a clear signaling system for letting each other know that you wanted to add something. And I even noticed at one point that a couple of you switched the order of your fingers, I think in response to thinking about, the amount of time that each team member had taken up so far. That not only shows that you really know the rubric for this competition, but that you are considerate team members with one another. Keep up that good work in every single context that you go into. As far as some constructive feedback goes, you had so many different sources of evidence that at times I kind of felt like you were like shooting it in my direction. So I would encourage you to slow down a little bit. Always make sure that the way you're delivering the information actually allows it to have the impact that you want it to have. But again, I am so impressed with all of you. We had a team yesterday wearing literally the same outfit. I do notice that you all are color coordinated today. Nicely done. And I am just so excited for all of your futures. So well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. You guys had so many things that you presented. I really loved the signal method, whatever, that you developed. That was really nice. And it's really useful in a, Zoom universe where it's really hard to focus on who's talking. And again, I agree with Maria, like you mentioned new information that I was like, oh, a drone caucus, that would explain a lot of things, but I didn't know that. And you presented a really nice argument and defended it. So great work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.